Oh, that should be good. Yeah, so as part of the work I've been doing with Plan, this I promise was purely coincidental. Mark was picking up this issue. So this issue here. But he's off on paternity leave, so like yeah, I said I'll take it off your hands, and it's to migrate CRM contacts to create a widget for CRM contacts. Now, I may have vaguely gone over this last week, but yeah, the widgets aren't simply like front end things that I'm kind of familiar with in the past. I considered each of these things to be a widget. And I mean
Hmm.
they are widgets, but they're now in the work item world. There's like a concept of a widget in the back end as well as the front end. Um, so each widget, um, well, let's go through the docs, I guess. Um, yeah, there's this, I don't know, half a dozen, maybe more than that actually. But I think that it's been a bit of an iterative process figuring it out as you go. So I've taken the time coming at it with completely fresh eyes and not really having a clue what I'm doing to try and document the approach. So this is what I've ended up with. We just do what's the one I want in line? Be a bit more readable. Yeah, so widget argument to mutation. Yeah, so we've basically got two mutations, which are used, one to create a work item and one to update work item. So each widget is like an argument for both the create and update mutations, depending on whether it's something. Some of the widgets are like awards, like reactions. So that only exists on an update and not on a create. And there's a few similar ones. But yeah, essentially each widget has its argument on the create mutation and the update mutation. Won't jump ahead. Then the widget has arguments which can either be the same for create and update, or they may differ slightly. So in this one, I've got a create input type, because when you create, you can only add contacts, whereas when you're updating, you can add, remove, or update the contacts. So we've got subtly different arguments for the two different input types. We need to define the widget field. So that's kind of like the data rather than the parameters and arguments, the data that comes back. So that's this CRM contacts type. It just has the contacts field. We have to add the widget to the work item widget array. There's a few of these that I haven't fleshed out so much with like what that means and why, because I don't really know the answers. But hopefully someone will review this MR soon. So yeah, skip a few. Then we actually define the quick actions that relate to the widget, which is in here. The kind of reason for this is that at the moment we've got quick actions that are kind of merge request ones, we've got issue ones, we've got shared ones. I'm not sure if there's any more, but there's a few different places where they live. But now it's much more complex with work items, because a work item has a type. That type can have n number of widgets, and then each of those widgets has quick actions associated with them. So, what you don't want to have to do is have, um, you know, I don't know what you want to call it, but like a crazy number of where we've got issue work items, issue quick actions, merge request quick actions, and shared quick actions. We don't want to have like, I don't know, incident quick actions, task quick actions, epic quick actions, etc. So we tie them to the widget. and then the widgets are tied to the work item types, and it all kind of figures itself out. We then create callbacks to define how those mutations, like how the widget is handled in the mutations. So somewhere in here, I should have a callback. I guess this is kind of like what you would do in the mutation in the sort of old world, if that makes sense. So we can do a before create or a before update, but in this instance, I've used the after save commit. We've got a clever little helper that allows us to say if the work item type has changed, which is something we support. So you can switch like an incident to be a ticket or a ticket to be a epic or a whatever. Then we actually want to clear the contacts off if the widget's no longer available on whatever the new type is. Otherwise, let's go through and set the contacts. Setting the contacts, we'll do a couple of checks to make sure it's valid. Raise various errors if it's not valid, and these wrappers, they don't throw exceptions. They basically create a payload which GraphQL interprets and understands with the errors in, and then calls the service when it's ready, and that's just using the old school, like the traditional existing set CRM contact service. I had to refactor it to handle groups as well as projects, which wasn't a massive change, but previously issues could only live in a project, whereas work items can live against a project or a group. So I had to make a small change there. Define the widget and widget names. Yeah, so that I think is for like seeding and setting up the database and the test, similar to this one where we're saying, oh no, where did I miss the migration step? Oh yeah, this one. Add the widget to the appropriate work item types by adding it in here and creating a migration which inserts a few records into the database. Then we have to update the GraphQL docs and translations, and then do specs for everything we've just done. So it's quite involved. I'd love to try and see if we can maybe get rid of a few of these steps. First, I probably need to understand a bit better what they do. But if it's just like pulling a list of all available widgets and mapping them, like here you can see. Yeah, this one we just seem to be like listing all the available widgets, so that I feel like that could be pulled from like something dynamically, and then this is mapping each widget to its type, which again seems like something that should be possible without having to sort of manually add every entry. But it's been interesting, and yeah, the MR's got database approval. It's had a couple of rounds of back end, so hoping it will be merged in the next couple of days, and we have a recipe now, so we can rinse and repeat, hopefully, with any others that I assume we've still got a bunch to do. So yeah, that's vaguely interesting. And then I've got to build the front end widget, obviously, to go along. Yeah, which I mentioned. I think Andrew was on last week that there's some designs which are, I don't know if aspirational is the right word, but rather than sort of lifting and shifting the existing functionality, it's quite nice to see the desire to so basically have the ability. So at the moment, contacts can only be added and removed using quick actions. But the idea is to actually have like a drop down to be able to add contacts, remove contacts, and then I'm not sure if it was that screenshot. The UI is changing just a little bit to give you the organization name as well as the contact names if there is one. And then
I love that department name there in the design. US Special Office for Secure Technology and Long Org Names.
Yes, absolutely. Tweaking the hover a little bit, although I think it's only really adding these icons. I don't think anything else is too different. But yeah, so it should be fun. Yeah. So sorry, I'll stop sharing for a minute. I know, yeah, Marco, you had something to look at. Jim maybe has something as well.
Yeah, welcome, Jim.
Andrew had something to have a look at, actually.
Ah,
yeah, I was asking about. Oh, okay. Oh gosh, sorry. I've got to use Zoom in the browser, and it's not ideal. So I was doing some GCK updating and rebasing, and while that was taking its time, I had a quick look for a small MR or a small issue I could pick up. And can I
you
share
weren't
from
tempted
here?
by our new container environment yet?
I don't think I can consider that quick, I'm afraid. Oh, you mean to start using? I could have started using that. Is that sharing?
Yep.
Oh, it is. You can see. Okay. Can you actually see my browser?
Yep.
And indeed.
Let me move that over there. Bring that out. So, yeah, I had a look for this because whilst the GCK was updating, I went to add a new personal access token and noticed that this is going to work because I'm on my branch. When you come to add a personal access,
like any date in the future or something?
Yeah, actually, yeah. Let me switch back to Git checkout master. Wait that for you to recompile. At the moment, you can select any time in the future because I was setting up the GLab CLI tool, and it asked for a personal access token. So I went into GitLab.com, tried to create a personal access token, and set it like 3 years in the future. And it complained saying, "Nope, you can only do it like a year from now." Had a quick look for issues, and I found someone had posted this from 2021, which is exactly the same
Oh, so
issue.
interesting. It actually complained, did it? Because I suppose I just clear it and it defaults to a year, but it does actually complain.
It defaults to 30 days, I thought, if you clear it.
No, if you clear it, if you don't put anything in there, it defaults to 30 days. But if you click the cross, then that clears it and it will default to a year.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Yeah, I thought it defaulted to 30 days.
Because you're basically saying, I don't want it to expire. But because it has to expire. So that's what my sort of workflow, if that makes sense. But I didn't realize if you set a date, I thought it would just say your date's too far in the future, so I'm going to default it to.
Yeah, so if I come all the way up here, like 3 years from now, and select a date, it allows you to pick it.
Yeah.
You try and create it, and it straight away comes back saying has to be before that. So there's a UI issue there where it should
absolutely awesome
limit it.
Yeah,
I did a little bit of research to start with, and let me go through this. Oh gosh, which file was it? Yeah, inside this file. This is the CE version of the personal access token create service. Yeah. And you can see that down here there's a max expiry date, which is this this value days from now. And if you check here, it's 365. So CE has a very, like an inflexible 1 year limit, regardless.
Right.
If you check the, where's the EE version? Oh, no. I think in the EE version, max expiry day calculator, target user, max expiry date. This does a bunch of stuff that boils down to, I think it's this one.
I guess now we're starting to see why it wasn't implemented already, because it wasn't as simple as we first expected it to be, mate.
Yeah, oh, I haven't included the file that it was in. Oh, no. There's an override for the EE version. That changes that one. I think it was this. Def personal. Yeah, personal access maximum, which calls the group one if it's a group managed account, or the instance one. And the instance one does, that was it, current settings. Oh, gosh.
Oh, this is the usual rabbit hole.
Yeah.
So yeah, here we go. So this is what the EE one does, as far as I can tell. This method doesn't exist in CE, so we can't just call this method. But in EE, it checks. Oh, I mean, it returns an empty string, or a null, whatever. Unless the instance has an override set, because apparently you can change it in EE.
Okay.
I don't know if you can change it more than a year. Were you going to say something, Marco?
No, I didn't know that we could change it.
I didn't know we could either. I'll have a quick nose while you're going.
From the documentation, if I remember correctly, the max you can have it in EE is a year, but corporate accounts can change it to be less than a year. So say they can have a max of 90 days. It's a change that came out within the last, I want to say, year and a half, and it was really annoying when it first came out.
Yes, I remember, actually, that is true. There is the limit of 365, because I found another issue where someone was asking for a maximum of around 400 days so that you could update the token after it expired without having to keep doing it earlier and earlier and earlier.
Right.
Yeah. So.
Oh yeah, I found the setting now in the general admin area.
Okay. What happens if you try and set it to more than 365? Why am I doing that? I'm going to open up the merge request that I started.
This form contains the following error. Max personal access token lifetime must be less than or equal to 365.
Okay, that actually helps a lot.
Is it
so? Go on, Marco.
The visibility and access control?
Account and limit, I think.
Okay.
It's called maximum allowed life. Oh no. Maximum allowable lifetime for access tokens, which is quite funny because, well, it's not funny. It's me just being OCD. One's called max allowable and one's max allowed.
Whereabouts was it, Lee? Sorry.
So in the settings, general, and then under account and limit.
I guess that's only for the ultimate though, because I don't see it.
There is maximum allowable lifetime. Yeah, I imagine it probably is, because it's a security feature, and I think most security stuff is sort of ultimate.
Okay, so that's fantastic. So I went digging around into this. There is a small. Oh, where's view?
Watch out for tokens.
I'm on local. I'm trying to make very conscious not to go in there. So yeah, there's a small view app here. I went digging around for that, and hopefully it's still in here somewhere. Wait, on the branch. That's not many. Oh, there you go. I found this is the Ruby template. This is the div and text field that's there by default. I spent far too long trying to add max date and minimax dates in there before realizing that it's not used anymore.
So time to clean up the code.
Potentially. So I found where it is being replaced because this says it accepts a minimax date from the DOM, and it does. The problem is I was trying to add it to the text field. You need to add it to the container class.
Yeah.
That was frustrating. That led me to this. That led me to this method, which is in one of these helper files, which led me to this. This is the only line I would have expected to need to add, which, backtrack a little bit, I was hoping I could just add in here, I think it started off with something like personal access token, max, I know this isn't right, token lifetime, or whatever that thing was called.
The value of basically.
But I don't know if this is something. How do I explain this? The issue I had was that no matter what I was putting in here, it didn't get passed through to the front end.
Oh.
I ended up tracking it down, and it's because there's an EE override here.
Oh.
And the original code looked like this, where it would return. Wait, did it look like that? Let me check my diff. No, that's the other one. It's so convoluted. What was happening is that this was passing this license check, which makes sense because I think I'm running EE in the GCK. But then it was getting to this max date, personal access token, max expiry date, and that was returning nil. So it was merging with my other one and then overriding max date to be nil.
Yeah.
Which, I don't know, didn't seem right. I don't know why.
The override or the fact that personal access token max expiry date was returning nil?
That it's returning nil. I mean, it's obviously like being checked here that it's not nil, or that it may be nil. So I don't know why that is. Like this bit of code here is making it return nil at some point.
Probably that was already there before the maximum of 1 year was enforced. So basically, unless your company set the maximum date, you wouldn't have a maximum date, so that would return nil and not block you from the UI.
Yeah, because I think what should be happening is that this should never return nil. I think it should always return 365 if you haven't set anything. No, I mean the correct solution should be that this always returns some number or date in this case, actually.
Yeah, well, at the moment that you cannot have an infinite personal access token, I think that should never return nil.
Yeah, because I mean that's essentially what's happening. This is returning nil, so that doesn't get set. And then when you go to this page, it doesn't have a date, so you can select any time in the future.
The question is, I guess, do you update, like here we could just do an OR, but it'd probably be better to update that where that data comes from, that method. But will it break anything else? But I guess there's only one real way to find out, right?
Yeah. Because this is coming from instance level, which is coming from here, which is coming from there, which is coming from this one, that will be set to nil because the database doesn't have a value set, like it defaults to an empty string.
So that will go to super, right?
Yeah.
It will now, because I've overridden that. I changed that.
Okay, cool.
Because I added this back, or not back. I added this to the CE version.
Yeah.
Where it just returns the default.
Okay.
And that, I feel like this should be part of the CE code now, because there's always a max expiry date.
Yeah.
So I feel like that's correct. This I wasn't too sure about, but like talking to you guys, that also sounds like you agree that this should always be returning some date.
Yeah. As I say, I wouldn't be overly surprised if something breaks. But I hope that it'll be tests that have been written for the sake of being written, like a test expecting a nil, which won't return a nil anymore. So it's a question of, well, you know, okay, we update the test, but does it actually break anything functional wise? I wouldn't expect, but you know.
Yeah. So I changed this to return the CE version. The CE version always returns 365.
Yep.
That comes up to here, which bubbles up.
And you should also have a look at the group, the other method for the group, to make sure that also never returns to nil.
Yeah, very true. So that's now returning the super. The super's returning that. And then in the CE version of this helper, I added the max date. That doesn't need the ampersand now because it always returns a value. I can remove the ampersand from the other one as well, actually, now.
Yep.
So the CE version will get this. The EE version will get whatever's been set or fall back to the CE version. And with those changes,
can't we the method called to get the maximum expiry date from the EE and the CE version, is it the same? Like, can we remove the difference? Because right now, even the CE version always has a maximum expiry date.
This is the only method that's overridden in the EE version.
So, and that's from the application settings. So current setting, I guess you don't even need to have an EE version of the access token helper right now.
I don't know if there is anything in. Is that application? Oh no, this does still need to be there because it needs to check if you have that, then it needs to call the EE version of that.
Okay.
Is this the class you're talking about, sorry?
Yeah, but personal access token max expiry date, that method now works for both EE and CE versions.
No, this only exists in EE.
Oh, okay.
Because this does in EE, you can this is a group managed account, so you can override it at the group level or the instance level.
And is there a CE version of the personal access token helper?
This class. There is, it's this. So that's the default for CE. So CE just calls this. Personal access token max expiry date. Max personal, yeah. So this used to only exist in EE. I've now created the fallback version in CE, which just calls the fixed 365.
Yeah.
And the EE version will return the CE version if there's nothing been set in in the admin area.
Yeah. Yeah, so I wonder if you go to the EE version of the helper, the only difference at the moment is basically that check for the feature available.
Yeah, check to see if you have access to this.
But
and if you do, it calls this method, which checks the group level access token expiry date, and then calls the instance.
Yeah, I'm trying to think if there's a way to avoid having to have two different logics. Because you now have one method.
You could move the license check further down the rabbit hole, maybe?
Yeah, that's just what I was thinking. You could, instead of having this override in the helper, we could have this method in the CE version, and then this method in the EE does an override here.
Yeah.
But I feel like you're just moving things around then for
pretty much.
this. I don't think there's any real benefit either way. I think that can be removed from there, and I think that can be removed from there.
And have a look at the group method to check that can return.
Group one, thank you. Yes. So that's group current user managed person. Oh gosh. Application group def. Okay, that looks like that's going to be covered as well then. Because that's calling the same thing that the instance level calls.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think that's safe still. Push that up. I'll check. I'm surprised. I pushed this up yesterday, so I don't know why a pipe. Oh dear, I don't know why a pipeline didn't run. And now I'll check the failed tests. Okay, that is the end of my. Oh, hang on. How do I stop the screen share?
You already stopped it.
Oh, did I? When did I stop it?
I don't know.
Wait, what? Wait, could you see what I was doing then, or you must have been able to?
Yes, you stopped sharing like 30 seconds ago, like right before you asked.
Okay, because I clicked what I thought was the stop screen sharing, but then it asked me to share my screen again. I was like, I'm already never mind.
Yeah,
okay.
I think that's
Sorry.
a UI issue that Zoom has on the web browser.
Jim, I think you said you have something as well, don't you?
Yes. So at work, I cannot convince anyone to use GitLab, and they want to use SmartSheet, which is glorified spreadsheet.
What?
And so what I'm looking at doing is integrating SmartSheet with GitLab. I know there's been a ticket for that for many years, and several of your customers have requested it. Looks like. The question that I have is, if we start with an integration like that, because I found the whole integration docs on how to begin doing an integration. First off, does anyone have any high level overview of how the integration works / how it gets into into CE/EE? Like, does that have to get approved by a team or something?
Good question. And I'm sure I remember seeing something recently sort of I'm just gonna say like a negative sort of being basically saying like the integrations architecture is lacks a little bit to be desired, and that I don't know if it's been rethought. Let me see if I can find the issue this was on. I think it was something to do with bounties that I've been looking at. And if I can find the conversation.
I will say it does seem to be lacking a bit.
I struggled. I remember Nicholas looked at the Discord and Slack integrations, maybe made some changes or improvements, and yeah, the rabbit hole. Although it was a few years ago, maybe, but you know, I was less FA with Ruby, etc. But
yeah, we also had a look at how to create an integration, I guess, a month or probably two ago, during another pairing session. And that's quite the rabbit hole, because the settings page is being built on the back end, but I don't fully remember how it worked. But then you have to make it actually work with with GitLab itself. And looking at SmartSheet, it's basically similar to Jira, so probably having a look at how that integration works could be an idea.
But I would definitely, so the relevant group, or I guess the issue, let me just open up the issue because I know you linked that. The issue already have the group. Oh, no, it doesn't. That's interesting. Tag the, oh, so it had group runner on it for some reason, and that was changed. So import and integrate, I think, is the relevant group. So I've tagged them on it. So we can tag, I'll tell you what, if I...
It's a very old issue, isn't it?
80 years.
It's got Sid on there commenting, which is
insane, isn't it? Share my screen again. So yeah, so what I know this isn't GitLab product. So yeah, this is challenging even after I've been working with the product for so long, but I know that the integrations belong to import and integrate. So then this is the magic page that I always use to then find who kind of looks after it. And for some reason this doesn't always work. Integrate, where are you? Right, so, and here we've basically got the product manager and the engineering manager. So we can ping these two just to say that we potentially are interested in working on this. So, all right, something grabber, yeah. And what was it? I don't know what the grammar is. I got that wrong, right? Is that you? It's you, isn't it?
That looks like me.
Sorry, good. Is interested in. Keep it simple. Yeah,
Thank you.
I missed that, sorry.
So let me ask this. If no new integrations are being planned at this point, then the next best step that I could do is build something with webhooks or something.
Yeah, exactly, and that's actually what I've like before. I had my eyes open to sort of open source, and the fact that GitLab is open source and you can make changes. Everything that I did was using the APIs and webhooks, and for some things, it's still quite a good solution. So yeah, you could potentially hook in again, assuming Susan, it's like project management that the system on the other end hopefully sends webhooks as well, but you probably then need some middleware, essentially something that will receive the webhooks from both SmartSheet and from GitLab, and then it will translate those into API calls to update the other system, depending which direction you want the integration, or if you want it in both directions.
Are there any frameworks for that on the GitLab side? I know something like, what is it, MargeBot or something for.
Yes, I suppose you could consider the Triage Ops project as a bit of a sort of I don't know, an integration-y type piece like this, an engine that receives hooks and makes API requests and goes between different systems. But it's massively evolved. So architecturally and various other things, it's probably not what it would look like if it was being rebuilt today. If you were to have a go at something like this, would Ruby be your sort of preferred language of choice, or what might you be looking to build it in?
If I'm doing it in GitLab, Ruby would be it. Otherwise, I would probably choose Python or something, just for ease of use of my coworkers. Even though I know
I understand, and I know a lot of people are using JavaScript these days, even for server-side stuff, which I don't think I've had much visibility of.
When I was at Intelli, we were using a product called Aha and wanted to get an integration between GitLab and Aha, and we ended up going down like AWS Lambda thing that we set up for webhooks, and I think we ended up using some JavaScript SDK. I don't think it was an official GitLab one, but yeah, it just listened to webhooks from both sides, translated stuff, and then spat it across to the other one.
So there's a couple of platforms. I don't know if you've seen or used. I personally haven't used Zapier or Zapier, but I know that a lot of people do. I really like
business plan with Zapier.
Oh, cool. I really like Pipedream. I believe it's more powerful, but I could be mistaken. Like, there's a lot more opportunity to write code in Pipedream rather than Zapier, which I think is a bit more like, if there's not a drag and drop component that you can just select some drop downs and put some numbers in, then you might be stuck. Whereas Pipedream was a lot more kind of like, you can write a custom, it's drag and drop sort of flow diagram, but if you want to add custom blocks that use JavaScript or Ruby or any other language, and you're free to do so. I think they've recently added support as well to hook it into Git, which for me is like a real kind of, like to not be able to store your, what we're going to call this, it's not infrastructure as code exactly, but your workflows as code, and be able to kind of version them and have reviews and approval processes and things like that is quite a game changer.
Or you can build your own webhook.
Elaborate.
Like, if you want to, you can create your own webhook handler, so you can build your own logic and whatever you want to do based on what happens. Oh no, it's the other way around. I was thinking about building a webhook application to handle GitLab notifications and update the SmartSheet.
No, I mean, I think that was the first sort of suggestion, like to either use Ruby or Python or some tool to build something from scratch. But again, yeah, sometimes you depend on how, I don't know, how much time you want to spend on it, how big and crazy and complex you want it to become. Like for something quick and dirty, and I shouldn't really say that because you can probably do a lot more than quick and dirty with these tools, but I think they definitely allow you to get up and running quickly. The other thing, I guess, API is not really the word I'm looking for, is it? So it definitely looks like there's some form of webhooks available on this end as well. And obviously you need webhooks on both sides and APIs on both sides, depending on which direction or how clever you want the integration to be.
Okay.
That being said, I guess, again, you want to be careful, like, of making it too awesome, because you probably do want to try and get people into GitLab. So having some level of integration is probably nice to start people like using it. But then like, oh, but if you were to use GitLab natively, you would also get X, Y, and Z. So I can probably speak quite a good story here, because I built an integration with a ticketing system, a help desk, a service support, whatever you want to call it. And it used webhooks in the API, but the information only flowed from the help desk system into GitLab. It didn't go the other way. It meant that you didn't get like that full picture. So, like now you can go into an issue and you can see the related merge requests, or you can go into a merge request and see the related issue, and you can have things configured so when you merge a merge request, it closes the related issues. And there's a whole bunch of awesome stuff that you get of having this single platform. And you lose that. Even just referencing, like, yeah, you can into your external system, assuming that you've got GitLab for your source code already, and it's just the sort of issues side of things that you're looking to move over. Like even just being able to reference other like files in GitLab and yeah, those kind of bits and pieces.
Yeah, so what I'm envisioning it to do, so we do something similar for Jira, because creating some of the PM have just made it impossible to create tickets inside of Jira itself. And so I get the joy of using 3 different systems. I have to use Jira, GitLab, and SmartSheet all together. But of course, not everyone on the same team uses all 3 tools. So it's like, oh, this team we only use Jira and SmartSheet. This team we only use SmartSheet. And we have GitLab as well. And I'm trying to bring that in. So how I'm envisioning it is, right now, if you create a line in SmartSheet, it goes and automatically creates a GitLab ticket for you. And then the only thing that gets synced between the two are title and status, and that's it. And maybe due date, but that's it.
Okay.
So, like, all the comments and everything will still live there. You just have to click on a link or something in SmartSheet to get to the other system, which is kind of how we have Jira set up. So the PMs can do all their PM nonsense, but we get to use our real GitLab stuff.
Also, okay, so the sort of starting point will be SmartSheet, but actually people will work on the issues in GitLab with the comments and other bits and pieces.
Correct, yes.
Awesome. Okay, that's nice. That's nice, because like you say, you're allowing people to use GitLab by sort of, just moving the stuff that people are doing in the external system into GitLab. Awesome. Yeah, I like that. And keeping it simple with just a few, I don't know what you want to call it, properties, attributes, or whatever, just to say like the title and the status. Yeah, that I would be really tempted to try poking around with a tool like PipeDream or Zapier or something to do like a reasonably straightforward integration. The other things to think about are like visibility, and I don't know what you call it, but like I don't know what kind of job role you have and what experience, but like it's great building things like this. But then if it, I don't know, 1 in 100 times it falls over or something goes wrong or like it has an outage and you have no visibility of that, then it can be a bit of a pain. So yeah, it's definitely worth thinking about how are you gonna, can you reconcile numbers in some way between the systems to check every so often has anything failed to replicate to sync.
That's a good point. When I do work like this, I always say this is offered with a warranty to my company, and I tell them use at your own risk. So
cool. No,
big
that's
thing
that's
for
that's an easy way of doing it. Sometimes I'll build things either I'll favor scheduled rather than going for webhooks. You could just have something scheduled that just polls like every 15 minutes or however frequently, and that's you could have something better built into that to say, well, record the last time I was, or record the time now, and then figure out when was I last run, and then it knows what window to run for. So even if you take your server offline for 24 hours, when you switch it back on, it kind of resumes where it left off and says, well, I haven't run for 24 hours, so I need to pick up everything since X date or whatever. So there are some slightly different approaches depending on whether you want it real time and what kind of tooling and languages and other things.
Yeah, and I think that state of eventual consistency is what we want. That's good enough at this point. The other big issue that we have is just because we do self-host our GitLab and it's accessible on the internet, but they have a huge thing against like tools like Zapier, which we don't control. So it all has to be self-hosted, unfortunately. So
no, but again, like Andrew mentioned Lambda, like something serverless. The only thing about Lambda, I don't know if there is a way, but I think it goes to
Don't use
sleep.
Lambda, because when I built our own webhook, I started using Lambda, but that was failing because Lambda on its own doesn't work. You need an entry point to manage the Lambda on AWS. So what I then did,
API gateway.
yeah. So what I then using was an app runner, I guess, if I remember correctly, and that's basically the whole service, and that you can have it to pin up only when a webhook is triggered. So you basically don't have any cost if no
I'll look at that one. So I've actually have got an active Lambda webhook engine for GitLab. The only challenge I have is that it goes to sleep. I think like basically spins up the container and then serves requests and randomly it will go to sleep, and when it comes back to life, it might take a little bit longer to warm up. But I've not really had any problems off the back of that. But yeah, I'll look at App Runner. So
I was going to say it depends on how much activity you're going to get. If they're updating things quite frequently, then like your Lambda will be cached pretty well. We already had the infrastructure in because we were using Lambdas elsewhere in our stack, so it was fine for us.
The other thing is it's so
and cold starts
cheap.
weren't an issue. Yeah,
I think it currently costs $0.00 a month. Like we're below the free threshold of, I don't know what it is, like 10,000 or 100. It's probably like 100,000 executions or something. And I can never remember. Amplify and Lambda are both really, really cheap.
I mean, if you've got spare container, you could just run a standard container somewhere. Kubernetes or whatever.
Yeah, on-prem, whatever. Yeah.
And just have it scrape one side, choose one side to scrape, and then have it go and update the other, and then go and reconcile how we want to do it.
Pretty much.
It sounds like you're trying to build exactly what we were building when I was at Intelli, only with a different product. And I completely get what you mean about product owners and whatnot all using their own separate tools. It gets quite frustrating.
So Marco just reminded me that he built in .NET a tool which is kind of similar to the Triage Ops tool, but architected recently. So with all the learnings that we've sort of now made off the back of the Triage Ops tool, so it's sort of like an engine. It might be a non-starter straight away, seeing as you mentioned Python, but yeah, an engine that you can sort of plug in processors. I'm not sure if you did call them processors, Marco, but like to sort of say, listen to these events and do that. But again, actually, from what you're saying, it might be that you're not looking at going down the webhook engine. And Marco, thinking about it, this is more the other way, isn't it? It's data coming in.
Yeah.
Although it might want to listen for closing issues in GitLab to sync that back, or change of title and sync that back. But certainly worth a little look.
Yeah, so what I'm kind of thinking is what the easiest thing to do would be every 2 minutes go scrape the SmartSheet for all its data. And then let's say they close it or change an assignment and go and do it that way. Otherwise, have a webhook that goes to my, I don't want to say front end, but my bot, for example, I'll call it, that says, hey, something on GitLab changed, so that it can reconcile both, if it makes sense.
Well, you could have taking advantage of GitLab features to scrap every 5 or 10 minutes. You could have a scheduled pipeline to call the API on SmartSheet and pull the data, and you basically could build the scrapper in Python or whatever language you want to, and have that run as a scheduled pipeline on GitLab. So you also have the benefit of having the full source code of what you want to do while scraping the data under GitLab and under source control.
Let's add what's it called? Analytics and observability and telemetry, etc. while you're at it. So I'm using
and you also have the benefit of being able to check the pipelines to see if the pipeline failed and know if something happened and stuff like that.
So the only thing that won't allow you to do is have a webhook go out. So say GitLab made a change.
No.
You can't have it run, right?
No.
Webhook. Maybe. Correct me if I'm wrong, Marco, Andrew, but there's there's things called pipeline triggers. So you can basically create a pipeline trigger, which gives you a URL, which you can basically use as a webhook.
Yeah.
And send your webhook to that, which will then trigger a pipeline. It's maybe a little bit of a push, but if you wanted, like, if somebody updates something to trigger a pipeline, but it's not something I've tried and tested, but something to consider.
Otherwise,
you could do it.
Yeah, go on.
I was going to say you could do it, and I think you can configure the jobs to only trigger on particular jobs to trigger on a trigger versus running on the schedule as well.
Yep.
I'm looking at the triggers right now. Is there actually a trigger for something got updated on a ticket?
No, you would need to create a webhook, basically listen for the webhook and call trigger the pipeline from the webhook, basically.
Yeah. Yeah. So the webhook would be an issue hook if you want the status of an issue to trigger it. And then, yeah, you create your pipeline trigger, which is just generic, but then your webhook is what pulls the pipeline trigger.
And then for telling it what project and everything, I could just inject secrets at that point, right?
Yeah, I think so. I think so.
Yeah. Or just for the webhook to sync from GitLab to the other to the other like
So
update from GitLab to SmartSheet. You could just build the webhook externally without the pipeline. Like you have multiple options there.
So for the one with the trigger where you trigger it, I would just have a bot up and running on some URL that my GitLab instance can hit. So have it as like a container or something. As soon as it gets hit, all it does is it calls the pipeline to go and run my update pipeline.
So you don't need that middleware. I think if I may have misunderstood, sorry, but like the idea is that the pipeline trigger is basically a webhook receiver, if that makes sense. So you can point your GitLab webhook at your pipeline trigger and cut out the middleman. So you don't need a bot to listen for the webhook and then call your pipeline. Your pipeline trigger acts as that kind of middleman that's listening for a hook and then triggering the pipeline.
I didn't think
Do you want to do a quick screen share, Lee?
I can try. I'm making it up a little bit as I go along, but let's give it a try.
Yeah, I didn't think you could have a trigger that did a webhook.
So I don't know if I might just let's see if my GDK is up and running. While excuse me, while I'm having a look at this, let's have a look in there.
I'll be in the background preparing lunch in the meantime.
So some of GDK is working. Yeah, so hopefully on my project, be quicker for me to use prod. We'll see. I should ask Duo maybe. And if it'd be quicker for me to just do it on a production rather than waiting for my test system. So we've got pipeline trigger tokens. I think that's probably it. Might just need to do it on production if this is my GDK is being too slow. So yeah, so we can do in CI settings, we can create a pipeline trigger token, which I'm going to have to revoke afterwards because so trigger run the pipeline. So need to remind myself of is all right, so that's just yeah, so you can basically then do this in so I can then set up a webhook on this project. So I can say call this with my token, which I'm going to put in because I'm going to revoke it. Just who cares? So I'll do this when a comment is posted.
And you use the custom webhook template is what.
No, I didn't. I mean, I might want to or need to, but I don't think it matters because all we're saying is trigger a pipeline. We don't care on the content of the trigger. So now, hopefully, if I go into Meta,
that's not going to work. You've got the URL slightly wrong. When you paste it in the token, you remove the token equals.
Ah, thank you. Oh, and it's got ref name. I guess we're using main, all right? Not master. Yeah, mate. So hopefully now if I find a random issue, there we go. So if I look at webhooks, I can see, I got 400. So what was the missing CI config file? Oh, there's no CI in the Meta project, which I thought there was because there's a link for the README. I thought, but maybe I'm mistaken.
Is it in a branch? Not merged yet, maybe?
No, I don't think so. But anyway, you get the idea. That would have triggered pipeline. And then in the pipeline, I can do whatever I need to do.
Okay.
Makes sense?
I think so, yeah.
Cool. Marco, have you got 5 seconds? I know you're sort of lunching, but you were talking about AWS, what's it called, like App Runner or something, as a solution for like running a container.
Yeah.
Is it like where does it differ from say Fargate, or like what does or doesn't it do? Like what scenario have you used it for?
Well, I used it for the webhooks, and basically I build a container, and that's like it spins up the container from the image, handles the request, and basically kills the container right away if there's nothing else using it. It basically similar to Lambdas, but with Lambda, you need to have the gateway and stuff like that to.
No, you don't. There's a really simple, like you can basically just add an endpoint to Lambda. You just press a button.
Yeah, but if you remember when I started having a look at that, I started using the Lambda, but I kept the webhooks kept failing. At least the first webhooks. And then they started working, probably because the Lambda wasn't ready yet. Yeah, I mean, I had a chat with Patrick, and he mentioned that probably using the App Runner was a better solution because with Lambda you don't really need it, but it's better to have a gateway and stuff like that to make it work. And App Runner worked perfectly fine at zero cost if nothing's running.
Oh, cool. I'll have a look at. My expectation is they should be almost identical because the only difference is that Lambda, you can't bring your own container. You know, they're basically, well, actually, I think you might be able to now, but off the shelf, there's 3 or 4, like there's a Ruby one, a .NET one, etc. Whereas App Runner, you bring your own sort of thing. But yeah, I'm getting on really well with it. So if you do want to play with it again at some point, give me a shout. I can either show you what I've set up or we can debug it together. Anyway, I'm hungry. I'm sure you are too. Thanks all for joining. And everyone let us know how you get on. Ping us on the MR, Andrew.
Say again, sorry?